Are you always coming up with ideas? Do you marvel at successful business owners? Do you hate being told what to do? Ever take things apart just to see how they work? Are you a dreamer? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Pro Tapes and Specialties is the world leader in tape manufacturing and specialty conversion with over 40 years of experience. In addition to our pro brand of high-quality specialty adhesive tapes, we provide contract converting services that help improve your profitability, streamline your supply chain, and reduce inventory cost. We offer the most complete range of converting capabilities in the industry, such as cloth tape, double-coated tape, specialty tape, paper tape, masking tape, vinyl tape,
carton sealing tape, adhesive transfer tape, duct tape, foam tape, electrical tape, filament tape, foil tape, reflective tape.
And the tape just keeps on rolling. Visit us online today at www.protapes.com or call us at 800-345-0234. Pro Tapes, it's just how we roll.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Entrepreneur Enclave, Life's Coming Attraction. Man, I am so excited today. I've got Brother Cory on the phone. Brother Cory, how are you, man? Talk to me.
I'm great, sir. How you doing?
I am doing well. So I know that all of your successes have been documented, but we want to document it one more time. We want to thank you for your service as a Trenton police officer, but more importantly, you are the community philanthropist. You are doing great work in the community. So let's just start back from the beginning. Yeah. Who is Cory Mcneely?
Who is Cory? Well, first of all, I'm a child of God. So that's number one. I give all glory and honor to God just for everything. I've been incredibly blessed just to be where I am right now. A lot of folks who I grew up with are no longer here with us.
Yes.
Or are currently, unfortunately, incarcerated.
Yes.
So for me to just be, speaking with you right now, free, of a sound mind, I'm just blessed. But first, it all started right here in the capital city of Trenton. I was born in 1988 to Nicole McNair here in Trenton.
Yes.
My family, had their struggles. But my family knew, obviously, very early on that there was something that was special about me. So they made sure they paid close attention and, made sure I had everything I needed to be successful. So I was born and raised here in Trenton, educated in Trenton. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just stop you. What was so special about you that they saw that they knew they had to pour into you like nobody else's business?
You know what? I'm just going to, once again, attribute it to God because there are a lot of my relatives, a lot of, my peers and even my cousins who are in my age group, unfortunately have had some different run-ins with the judicial system.
Yes.
But I didn't have that because I had literally that village who were all like, making sure I stay on the straight and narrow. And I say that humbly because once again, it could have easily have been different. But folks have just always rallied around me and been my village. So I don't know what they saw. I had to kind of probably call and make some phone calls and say, what did you see in me? Yes. But I'm just going to attribute it to just God, just, kind of having, just that covering over my life because I've always had people to pour into me. I've always had someone there from very early on to just kind of take me under their wing and just to show me the right way. And that was, like I said, very early on. I can remember people just being a part of my life and showing me the right things to do, introducing me to those things that were necessary for me to be successful. And that's been literally since childhood.
Awesome. So let's back all the way up to high school. So you attended Trenton Central High School, correct?
Right. Well, actually, no. So my ninth grade year, my first year in high school, I went to Granville Charter High School, which was on North Clinton Avenue.
Okay, Granville Academy.
Yeah, so right. So I went to Granville, and that actually was their last year of being open. They closed my ninth grade year.
Okay.
And back then, my family, it was the rumor mill going around. Oh, Trenton Central High School is going to be overcrowded. It's not going to be good. So they basically, my family was a little reluctant. My grandmother had went to, at the time, Bill Tracy. He was the principal of Daylight Twilight High School, actually.
Yes.
And she didn't know much about it, and neither did my family. It was like kind of new to us. And she went to the high school and she like begged the principal, like at 15, I was 15, if he would allow me to come to the school in September. And he agreed. And so I wasn't your traditional Daylight Twilight High School student.
Yes.
But I went there and I came with credits from 9th grade, and I wound up finishing in my what would have been my 11th grade year. So I actually finished high school early at the age of 16. So I did my 10th grade year, my 11th grade year at Twilight, and then I finished in the 11th grade. So that was actually early for me.
Wow. And so you decided which college did you decide to attend?
So initially, I think we had spoke about it before, but initially I didn't have any, not that I didn't have positive role models,
yes,
but I didn't have any role models in my immediate family or within my circumference who actually went to a four-year university.
Yes.
So I just thought, okay, it was kind of cool. I'm going to Mercer County, right? So
okay,
the thing to do was to go to Mercer County Community College. And that's literally what I did. So, that August, we did the paperwork and I applied and I don't even know if there's an application and acceptance process, but I literally went and signed up for Mercer County, Community College. And there I was, starting classes towards my associate's degree. So it kind of was just second nature. Now that I look back, I'm like, I should have went to, an HBCU or I should have went to a four-year immediately. But, God has this, way of working things out. And
yes,
I did attend a four-year university. It just took a little longer than the traditional, high school student.
No, that's okay. So you do your 2 years at Mercer County Community College.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I recall, you went to up north, Jersey City.
Yes. So at that time, so I'm still, at that time I'm starting to think, what am I going to do now? I know I want to get an advanced degree. I want to get my bachelor's degree.
Yes.
But I didn't know, at that time, even the steps or anybody who had still at that time, anybody who I knew immediately who had went to a four-year university. And I was speaking with my cousin, a distant cousin at that time. And she said, she called it state. I went to state. And she just spoke so highly of the school and her experience in North Jersey. And here I am I call it country. I'm a little country boy from Trenton. Because Trenton is like 7 square miles. And literally it's only 5 if you exclude the Delaware. Yeah. So I'm from the small town in Trenton. And I think it's a big city in my head, but it's really not. And she said, I went to state and I was in Jersey City. And I would take the PATH train over to New York. And she made it sound so, so good. And I was just like, you know what? I want to go to state too. So I applied to NJCU, thanks to my cousin, Camilla Palmer. And I applied and everything just went through so swiftly. They got back to me. I was able to transfer my credits from Mercer County over to NJCU. Yes. And before I knew it, I was on my way up to Jersey City on the highway. And when I think about that village, literally, I got to find the photo. It's on my laptop, and the hard drive from that laptop is actually kind of damaged. I got to get the photos. I had about 30 relatives who went with me when I moved on campus to NJCU. It's like almost, it's really comedy, but it's a village. It shows how much support I had.
Yes.
I had my mom, I had my dad, I had my grandmother, my grandfather who is now deceased, my grandfather, my cousin Camilla, who I mentioned, told me about the school, her husband at the time.
Yes.
I had my aunt. I had about, I would say at least 25 people who went and helped me move on to campus in Jersey City.
Excellent.
They were looking like, where are all these folks coming? Where are they going? There was no room for them. But, literally they all were there to cheer me on, and they were so excited because I was the first one in my immediate family going to college. Wow. So I was the first male in my family to go to a university for an advanced degree.
Now, so through Mercer County, what were you majoring in? What were you interested in pursuing as a career?
So initially, I planned on working in television and radio. Okay. So my interest has always been like media arts, communications. So initially with Mercer County, it was like, I think their major there was literally TV radio. It was literally that, TV radio.
Okay.
When I went to NJCU, their focus was the same, but the program was called media arts.
Okay.
And so I transferred to NJCU under the media arts program. And I interned at that time in television and radio there. So going from Mercer County, I didn't have any internships. It was just kind of the experience of learning how to, speak and how to be on camera. And then also learning how to work the different radio functions, how to actually record yourself and edit and all that. NJCU, I actually interned. So when I got there, they had internships lined up for the students. So I actually interned. One of my major internships was actually with NBC Universal. That was the Maury Povich Show.
Wow.
So, everybody loves that show. You Are Not the Baby. What is it? You're Not the Father.
You're Not the
and
Father.
And then the women jump up and go running off stage and roll around. Like, I was actually there. I was the last set of interns with the Maury Show in New York. So I had that experience there.
Wow.
And a few other ones. I interned in Philadelphia. Once again, that village, Jeanette Harris, who was a principal in the Trenton Public Schools, she called me and she said, I know that you are in school for media, and for communication.
Yes.
My husband is, he's an attorney. She said he has his own radio show in Philadelphia. Would you like to intern with him? And I was like, of course. So literally I interned for Radio 1 for 100.3 The Beat on Sunday mornings. He had a talk radio show with Law. And I was one of the interns. That was my first radio internship, and I interned also at Beasley Broadcasting 96.5. That was a radio station.
Yes.
And then I interned in Newark at a production studio as well. So that was my plans. I planned on working in television and radio, and I was on my way.
When did the life-changing moment hit you that this is not for me, there's greater calling?
So I won't exclude it and say that I won't ever go back into media, because I enjoy, being on the radio. I enjoy being on camera. Folks tell me all the time, you have a radio voice. I love your voice.
Yes.
So I won't exclude working in media, but I will say that right before I graduated, I want to say about a month or two before I graduated, I was really thinking about employment. And I was thinking about, where am I going to work?
Okay.
And I had just finished my internship at the Maury Show.
Yes.
And they were moving to Connecticut. And I was thinking about, where am I going to apply to? And, I had to consider that and remember I mentioned before when I was younger, not that they were not around me, but I didn't know anyone who had an advanced degree. I didn't know anyone who had a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
I may have had dialogue with folks who did, but I didn't know. No one sat down and spoke to me about what the process was for going to a four-year university and getting your bachelor's degree. I didn't know anybody immediately who had done that in my immediate family. So I remember thinking, most folks who I know who have gained some sort of success, whatever success means at that time for me, a college degree, they all left and they never came back to Trenton.
Okay.
And I would hear them usually, and it's kind of damaging for a young child who lives in that environment. I can remember people talking about Trenton in a way that was very negative.
Okay.
The people of Trenton, this, that. And I remember thinking wow, do they know I live in Trenton? They know I'm from here? I literally, I live here currently. So you're including me in that group.
Yes.
I don't think they actually meant it to be malicious, but people, adults especially, have to be mindful of things they say, especially when they're influencing others.
Absolutely.
I'll just leave it there. So with that being said, I knew that most folks who had gained some sort of success, when they left Trenton, they did not return. And they were proud about not returning. And I said, you know what? God has blessed me to be able to go through this program at NJCU and complete it, and to gain some culturing, to open my mind up about different people. And literally only going 45 minutes up the road,
yes,
I got an experience, an eye-opening experience about culture, that I didn't get in Trenton. And so I said I wanted to bring that back here. I couldn't just leave and move to Connecticut or to New York and not give my people something
yes,
that had been deposited into me. And so that's what I did. I said, you know what, I want to give back. And I came back here, and immediately, I know it was meant to be, because I applied to numerous jobs, but I was called to work. At the time, it was by Melda Grant. Melda Grant, she worked in Trenton Public Schools.
Oh, yes. I know.
I worked under her
okay,
for school-based youth services. And I worked in the schools for 3 complete years. And that was definitely a great start to my professional career, because I was able to deposit a piece of myself into youth who at many times were in single parent households,
yes,
whose whose fathers were not there,
Yes.
and who had serious emotional and behavioral issues based upon trauma that they have been experiencing in their lives.
Yes.
And so I'm so happy I had that. I'm so happy I decided in my last semester of college to come back to Trenton because it was needed.
Wow. Now, before we move on, one of the things I just wanted to highlight is that when people talk about urban communities, the one things that we don't highlight enough is
Right.
this whole need to understand better trauma that
Right.
our youth face.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. The trauma is killing us. And I think now we're beginning to identify it, we're beginning to recognize it, and we're beginning to put resources to help our young men and women to deal with the trauma. And so a lot of times, and like you said, even though Trenton is maybe 5 square miles, we can't even imagine the type of trauma that they face day to day in the streets and, and in their home lives. So I'm glad that you came back. But as an aside, I still can imagine you being in New York City, hosting one of those shows, and that's going to come maybe after you retire.
Right.
So
Right.
who knows?
Right. Or maybe, we had a guy who retired from the police department.
Yes.
And we'll move on to what I do for my career. I just kind of gave it away.
Yeah.
But there's a guy who worked for my my organization,
Yes.
and he was doing both. He was actually acting, and he was actually a police captain.
What?
Both consecutively. Yeah, he was actually doing both.
Wow.
So it's possible to be able to have 2 careers.
And I've got a name drop. Very dear friend of mine. I've had him on my podcast before. Fraser Prince. He was a child actor.
Nice.
And similar, his mother says, you got to do something better. And she gave him an application to become a New York City, to get a job. And so at that time, the only thing that he wanted to really do was he became a police officer in New York City.
Okay.
And then from there, because of his experience, he started doing, if I got the show, but he was the co-host or executive producer or producer for this show where they were it was almost like American Most Wanted, but it was just based in New York City.
Wow.
And so he did that. And then during 9/11, after 9/11, he retired. And so now he's producing films. So I can see.
Exactly.
And I want to put
they can all work together.
I want to put you in touch with him too, because I think there'll be some great synergy there as well. But continue. I'm sorry. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted to kind of just definitely just follow up on what you said about the trauma with our kids. I remember working in the Trenton Public Schools, and I was the case manager, so I worked side by side with a mental health therapist.
Yes.
And we would pull these kids in for for counseling sessions, them and also their parents. Yes. And I can remember it was heavy stuff, and I was only like 22 years old at the time. Kids were talking about stuff that you couldn't even believe. Yes. I'll just say that. Yes. I'll just say that it was like some serious trauma. Yes. And some of those too, I had one kid, and of course he'll remain nameless. Yes. He came down one day, and he wasn't on my caseload, but they knew that we worked in school base. And he said, Mr. Cory, he was like, I'm just going through a lot right now. He must have been in 6th or 7th grade, and he actually was also in what we call inclusion. He was in a class for kids who had some learning disabilities. Yes. And he said, I miss my dad. He said, I miss my dad so much. And I said, well, where's your dad? And he said, my dad is, he's in jail. Yes. And he said, he has his main family. The kids go and visit him. He said he shows them so much love, but he said, my dad doesn't show me any love. And I just feel so bad. And just a piece of his story, that kid, I want to say, I remember sitting in his IEP meetings to assist the school. And I want to say 3 years later, that kid was shot and killed. Wow. That kid went out into the streets, and he wound up dying while in the streets. And just quickly, another story. I tell this story. This one is really one that's close to me. Yes. This kid, he was in my males group, and at the time, I had them to do letters. It was called Letters to My Father, or a letter to my father. And I had a group of men, or young men, write letters to their father. I said, whatever you want to say to your dad, if he's in your life, if he's not in your life, doesn't matter. Write a letter to your father. And I still have all those letters actually in my house. And this one kid in particular, he wrote a letter and he said, Dad, I want to thank you. And I'm like, okay, all right. He's reading it out loud. So I'm like, thank you. What do you want to thank him for? Okay. He said, I want to thank you for not allowing me to see my mother at a time when I needed her the most. He said, she was on drugs and she was sick. And he said, and you didn't allow me to see her. And then he went on to say, she's dead now and I can't ever see her again. And he ended and said, I want to thank you for nothing. And so his mom actually was drug addicted.
Okay.
She had contracted an STD that can deteriorate you. You kind of get what I'm saying, while out there in the street.
Yes.
And she died. And the father didn't want him to see her. And I'm sure dad was protecting him, but he didn't want his son to see her in that condition. And he said, no, you can't go visit her. You can't see her. She's out there in the street. She's doing the stuff she shouldn't be doing. And I don't think the dad knew that all he wanted was just his mother's love. All he wanted to see her. Kids don't care if your mom is on, they don't care if parents are on drugs. They don't care how they look. All they want is that love. Yeah. Right? And so literally she died while he was in middle school.
Wow.
And
one of the things that I find so interesting is that in spite of all the trauma our young folks go through, they are so resilient.
Resilient, yeah.
Oh my God,
it's almost even. I have to constantly remind myself that as well, because even we'll talk about my profession in a minute, but even in the work that I do, when I'm on certain scenes and there's serious incidents, right, traumatic incidents, I'm often saying, take the kids away, hide. And I have to remember that kids, of course, you don't want them to see traumatic things. Yes. But they're more resilient than the adults. Because we as adults learn how to process things. Yes. And we go through those stages of grief. And we go through all those things in our heads when kids are like, they're looking at it differently, a different lens. When they get older, maybe it'll be different for them to process. But as kids, like you said, they're resilient. So
thank God for the resiliency.
That was just, absolutely. But that was one incident that sticks out, and I kept his letter specifically separate. And of course, I marked out his name or whatever. But it was just him saying, "Thank you for nothing."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you do this fantastic work, but you still feel like there's another calling.
So it actually, it all happened, and it was kind of like by force. Yes. So I mentioned I was working under school-based youth services, and that particular position we were contracted with the Board of Ed. We weren't actually board employees. Okay. So we were through what was called the Safe Schools Healthy Students Grant. Yes. And it was like over $2 million for the grant, but it lasted for about 5 years. And I came in on that third year. Okay. And so the funding literally ended. I remember them panicking and trying to find funding and applying to all different types of grants, and nothing came through. So literally in that August, I had gotten I got word that our jobs were going to be ending, come the next school year. And so once again, I've always, speaking about resilience, I've always been resilient as well. I started applying to jobs, and before I knew it, I had applied to the state of New Jersey for the civil service exam. Okay. And they contacted me back. And I took the civil service exam, and I had applied for it to be a corrections officer. Now, I already had gotten, obviously my bachelor's, and I skipped the part that I worked on my master's while I was working in the school. So I finished my master's as well. Okay. But I said, well, let me apply for a state job and get in, and then I can decide where I want to transfer once I'm inside of the state. Gotcha. I applied to be a corrections officer just because just to apply, no real interest in law enforcement. And I went through, just keeping it real. I literally had no interest in law enforcement other than, maybe I'll be able to get in and get a job, and be a state employee. Yes. And so I went through their correctional officer training academy. Okay. And I started to, I was like, I kind of like law enforcement. They spoke about what police do on the streets and what COs do behind the wall. And we went to the firearms training and, had all these domestic violence trainings, and all this stuff is pretty interesting to me. Okay. So I said, you know what? Once I finished the academy, I said, I think I want to pursue this in a different realm. I think I want to actually work as a police officer on the streets. Okay. And, I did my time. I did about 3 years in corrections, but I had to, wait for the exam to reopen again for the police exam. And while I was there, I got some experience, and I think it was necessary. I personally think that, and this is a whole nother topic in terms of like what's happening with law enforcement, with use of force, with conflict resolution. I think that police officers on the streets should have to work in the jail before they actually work on the street. And I say that because in the jail, all you have is a little can of pepper spray.
Okay.
So literally, I worked units where I had over 120 grown men
Yes.
in the state of New Jersey
Yes.
who committed all kinds of offenses,
Yes.
who were involved in gangs, who shot people,
Yes.
who were whatever you could think of in the state penitentiary,
Yes.
they did it. And all I had was my
Can of mace.
155 pounds soaking wet at the time,
Uh-huh.
and my can of pepper spray. They probably gave me about 3 pounds of weight on my 155. So literally learning command presence, learning how to communicate with people, it helped me. So when I got on the street, and we'll talk about that moving forward, but when I got on the street as a police officer, I was one of the first ones. We were at a place. Now you wouldn't go to these kind of places. It's called Ann's Place in Martinez on North Clinton and Poplar. I wouldn't see you in those kind of bars.
No,
but there's a bar.
But I've been there though.
You've been there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a popular hangout in the city, and one is called Ann's Place and one is called Martinez. And they sit at an intersection.
Yes.
And not that it's violent. It's just kind of a little ratchet, as the young folks would say. It's like a lot going on.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I got out of so I took the test for civil service exam. Trenton Police actually called me back. I got hired as a police officer in Trenton, and boom, I'm there. So I did my timing corrections. I'm a police officer now, and here I am at Poplar and Clinton, Clinton Avenue, and we're outside, and maybe 150, 200 people outside.
Yes.
And my classmates who had never done any type of work in law enforcement, we were 2-3 months out of the academy. My classmates are all looking like shell shocked, like what is going on here? And folks are all in the street and they're screaming and they're like, "Hey, Cory!" Like people who I knew, and it's just like a lot going on. And I literally remember using my command presence and saying, "Listen, I need all of y'all to move, go to your cars, clear the street." And a sergeant at the time, he was like, "What did you do before you came to police?"
Yes.
And I said, "Oh, I worked in corrections, and also I'm born and raised here in Trenton. I know a lot of these folks who are out here at this bar."
Yeah.
He said, "There's something about you.
Okay.
You're going to do well in policing. You're going to do well in law enforcement.
Yes.
Because you were not afraid." He was
Yes.
like, "You're teaching." At the time, my partner had 5 years on the job. He said, "You're teaching your partner how to police."
Wow.
And of course, I didn't go back to my partner and say, "Oh, the sergeant told me I'm teaching you how to police." And he literally said, "You're making him a better officer."
Awesome.
And and so I'll go off on a tangent with that. But literally, I think that corrections prepared me to go out and work in police because my patience level was I had more patience.
Yes.
I knew how to de-escalate. I knew how to speak with people without having to pull out a baton and say, "Stop in the name of the law." Like I was like, "Yo, bro, what's good? Like, what are we doing?"
Yeah.
And people will respond to that, and they knew that I meant business, but I was also fair.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's how my beginning of law police went.
Let's take a break there for a second because I want to ask this question. So with what you just shared with us,
right?
Do you think that more police officers, not just in Trenton but throughout the country, should take some type of community awareness so that they know the community better before they come into the community?
You know what? And I'll just say this.
Yes.
I think that, some folks say, I think you have to have residency to work in whatever town it may be. Let's say, Los Angeles, California, right? Let's say people say, well, I think that you should have to live in Los Angeles in order to work in Los Angeles.
Yes.
What I will say is everybody is not going to be from Los Angeles to work in Los Angeles, right? So folks are going to come from other places. They're going to bring different, ways of thinking.
Yes.
They're going to bring, things to our city that we may not have even had if everybody from our city worked in our city. Yes. What I will say is you have to have a vested interest and you have to have a willingness to learn the community. That's what I will say.
Okay.
So I think that it's more than a cultural awareness. Okay. I think that you have to be willing to learn the culture of that community. That's what's really important.
Okay.
And it goes back to someone this person has since retired from a police department, because I have to be mindful I'm still employed. Of course, in terms of of things that I say and you know, what agencies I'm mentioning.
Absolutely.
But you know, and this is a learning it's a lesson for the person at the time. And this person also has retired as well. Both people have retired.
Yes.
And the individual told me they were riding around in a community and they were on the night shift. And there were people who were sitting outside. You know, sometimes in our inner cities, folks sit outside on the porch in the summertime. And it's like usually like 5 or 10 people, and it may be 1 a.m. they're sitting outside.
Yeah. And
the individual who was with their partner,
yes,
they said, I wonder why everybody's sitting outside and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. They should be in the house.
Yes.
And so the person said to them, but did you ever think that a lot of folks here in the city, here in this particular town,
yes,
don't have air conditioning?
Yes.
And they sit outside because they live in a brick building.
Yes.
And what happens to brick? It heats up.
Like
and usually it's like an oven inside. And so the person said, that's why they're sitting outside, because they're going to sit outside until they're ready, until they're good and tired.
Yes. They're
going to go inside and they're going to lay down and go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And the person turned and said, I never thought about that.
Yes.
So something as simple as judging and saying, well, why everybody outside in the front? And isn't it 1 o'clock? Why are you in bed sleeping?
Yes.
And ideally, I think they would probably want to be inside watching TV or, you know, on the phone.
Yes.
But it was so hot inside, they couldn't sit inside.
Yes.
So I think, and the individual told me that, you know, their partner began to, you know, ask more questions and they were able to teach them. And that's kind of the learning experience. Wow. Having a vested interest, wanting to learn more about the community that you're working in, right? Because it was ignorance. Like they didn't know. You can't expect them to know that the inside of those homes are like ovens. Yeah. But they learned that. And they learned it.
And I guess, you know, some of the outsiders, they bring their own, as you mentioned, their own cultural understanding and their own bias.
Right.
You know, which is unfair, and we've got to dismantle that before we can put you on the street.
But also teaching. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, because we all in some way are biased, right? Yes. Based upon the way we were raised, based upon the way we think, based upon the communities that we grew up in or what we watch on television, right? Mm-hmm. So based upon our exposure, that kind of sets the tone for what we kind of think the world is like.
Absolutely.
You know, so I won't hold it against them. Now, if I educate you and in return you still behave that way, now we have a problem, right? But if you're not educated, and I teach you, and then you actually become aware and you become sensitive to it, now I can work with you. Yes. And so I say that to say that, you know, if you're not from my community, but you want to learn about it, I can teach you. Now, if you choose to be ignorant, now we're going to have a little problem. Now, you know, Cory is very nice, he's very community oriented, but he also has a side that may not be as nice.
That we don't want to see.
If you treat my people a certain type of way, my community, I'll say, then I'm going to get you together.
Got you.
Respectfully.
Got you. Again, I thank you for your service, and just thank you for holding down the corners, man. Thank you. Right. So you're doing the community policing, and at what point do you say, man, I think I got to do more? I'm feeling my entrepreneurial spirits just rise up. When did that happen?
So you know, early on when I started the police department, and not that I've been here for 30 years, but early on, there was a lot happening here in the U.S. in relation to, once again, folks treating people in a certain community different, right? And also those folks not being from that community. Yes. And we saw things happening all across, you know, the nation. And I'm sure that a lot of names pop up in your mind when we talk about police brutality, and we talk about indifferential treatment, right, with people in certain communities. Mm-hmm. And I saw that, and I knew that wasn't me, right? So I knew that I didn't join law enforcement to have power, to have control over others. Can I flex? Absolutely. But me flexing, what is that going to do for me? So if I flex in front of a crowd of people and say, I'm the cop, move, or, you know, whatever, I'm still going to have those, because I mean, usually folks who do that, right? And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're flexing, there's some insecurities you got to deal with, right? So I would recommend calling the therapist, you know, that's listed on the back of your insurance card to deal with those insecurities, versus taking out on people who have, you know, less power or less authority than you have.
Absolutely.
That's neither here nor there.
Yes.
So I knew that the things that were happening in the U.S. did not reflect the way I felt about law enforcement, or
Yes.
it did not reflect the way I behaved in law enforcement. And so I said, you know what? How do I change the narrative? How do I show people that all cops are not bad?
Yes.
And so I was just kind of reflecting and thinking on what I could do, and I'll give it to God. One day I was driving, and I remember, the still voice saying to me, bridging the community with law enforcement.
Yes.
And then I got the other piece a little while later through service projects, because I've
Okay.
always been service minded. I've always done, cleanups and done things for seniors and people in the community. And so I was like, I can do this through service projects.
Yes.
And I remember, getting community members together. And I guess I'll take a break and breathe. But any more questions, I'll explain how that started as far as what I did with my first community service project.
No, keep talking, man. I'm
Okay.
breathing. I'm breathing for you.
You're breathing for.
I'm doing
So-
good. This is good.
So I still live in the city. And at the time I was working in patrol.
Yes.
And I remember one of my neighbors, she had been in her home for 60 years.
Okay.
And I remember, and I hate to keep plugging their name because it's not their fault, but an agency here in the county
Yes.
are responsible for lockouts.
Okay.
And they actually came and they taped a note to my neighbor's door.
Wow.
And I know what that means. And I got out of the patrol car. I was on my break at my, parked in front of my home.
Yes.
And I said, what was that? I said, what's going on? What happened? And he said, well, she's being evicted. And I said, she's been there for 60 years.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, well, I don't know the details. He said, but she has to be out in 2 weeks. He said, we've been sending her notices and she hasn't been responding. I was like, the lady is blind. She's blind in one eye, and partially blind in the other.
Yeah.
So she wasn't able to read it. So she had been getting all the notices, but she would sit them down on the table, the coffee table,
Yes.
waiting for someone to come over so they could read her the notices.
Yes.
With that being said, my 9-year-old neighbor had been living in her home for 60 years. Her husband passed away. He was helping to handle all the bills.
Yes.
They had taken out a second mortgage to build a ramp onto the back of the house, and also to build a room for handicap accessible, like sleeping, like a bedroom
Yes.
on the first floor.
Okay.
And it was overpriced. And basically, when he died, a relative of hers took over the financial affairs.
Okay.
And let's just say the bills were not getting paid.
Understood.
So they were paying their bills instead of paying her bills.
Understood.
And this lady hadn't been to the doctors, and we went into it deeper. But let's just say that I found out what was going on.
Yes.
I went onto social media and did something what we refer to as crowdfunding.
Yes.
I went on Facebook Live and I said, I have a senior in the community who's in need, and she's going to be evicted in 2 weeks. We have to find housing for her.
Yes.
If we don't find housing in 2 weeks, they're going to lock the front door, and she's going to be on the front porch with whatever she has, and that's
Yes.
going to be it. And so within about a week, I was able to raise $4,000 in a week.
Awesome.
And literally, I had different agencies. And I have a photo I'll share with you.
Yes.
The very next day after I posted that, I had about 4 agencies in her living room.
Wow.
It was me representing the police department, Trenton Police. We had the Mercer County Sheriff Department.
Yes.
We had Adult Protective Services, and we had it was another division of the state in relation to seniors.
Yes.
And like I said, within 24 hours, I had 4 agencies in her living room, and it was definitely a success story. She didn't keep the home,
Mhm.
but I think it probably was best that she didn't actually stay in the home by herself anyway. So she went to a senior high rise, and her address actually, believe it or not, for her apartment is the same as my home address.
Wow.
So when she told me where she was living, I was like, this had to be God. These numbers are literally the same. This is God.
Yes.
So, so like I said, we got her a place to live with that $4,000. We bought furniture for her entire home. She had been sleeping on a love seat, sitting up for 8 years, had not been in a bed in 8 years.
Wow.
We bought her a bedroom set from Rayborn Flanagan. We bought her a living room set. And then my grandmother and my aunt, who are both retired,
Yes.
they went and got her, with the rest of the money we had, fresh fruit and vegetables for about 6 months, and went and sat with her and talked with her. It's kind of like to have a little good time.
Awesome. Awesome.
And that was our first project. That was our
Wow.
first project.
But
and that was
when
the start.
you did your first project, you had no name. It was just, I'm doing it.
Right. So
Yeah.
I knew it was me doing community service work, and then the name came after Miss Jameson, and I named my nonprofit foundation the Cory McNair Foundation. And the reason why I chose my name is because it's just so easy. Folks, they know who I am.
Yes.
Cory McNair. They know I'm a police officer, and it just makes it so much easier to identify this as Cory McNair, the police officer who's doing community work, and it just makes it easier for folks to be able to catch on and get on board quickly. Like we're at a time right now where we don't need folks back. We shouldn't have to backtrack. I want you to know what's going on so we can be able to get on board and we can actually keep going. And that's kind of why I chose it. I didn't come up with a creative, name and put different words together. I said the Cory McNair Foundation. Yeah, that's it. But and here we are.
But more importantly, though, based on everything that you've shared thus far, credibility. Right. So why not use your own name?
The name has credibility.
The name has credibility. So why not?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one thing I pride myself on, folks always they say, "Oh, well, you don't have to tell us exactly down to the dollar amount of what you're doing." No. When folks give, I acknowledge who they are.
Absolutely.
I post their names on our pages.
Yes.
I thank them for giving, and I make sure that every recipient, we've done about 7 projects so far.
Okay.
I make sure every recipient, is able to get every dime that's put into, the crowdfunding for them.
Awesome.
So, we had another, I'll name 2 more. We had a senior as well, 90 years old, had been in her home over 60 years as well.
Yes.
Her husband passed away. We're talking about elderly women here.
Okay.
She had no support.
Okay.
So she had trees and shrubbery and weeds in her backyard that were over 6 foot or 6 feet high.
Wow.
So we literally got about 40 volunteers together.
Yes.
I did crowdfunding. I raised about $1,200.
Yes.
And we went and we cleaned out her entire backyard. And once we actually cleaned all the debris away, we found out that the back of our home was actually falling apart.
Wow.
And so with that $1,200 raised, we were able to build her a new staircase. God forbid if there was a fire in her home.
Yeah. She couldn't get out.
Have been trapped.
Yes.
She wouldn't be able to get out of her home.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So we built her a new staircase. We painted the back of the house and all that good stuff.
Now, because this is the Entrepreneur Enclave, I've got to ask some business questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, when you started the foundation, did you write a business plan?
So it's funny. I actually, going back to my master's degree, I had experience with writing business plans. So I got my master's degree from Rider University.
Okay.
Shout out to Rider University.
Absolutely.
I got it in organizational leadership.
Yes.
So I actually had written a business plan for my mock nonprofit that I created when I was in grad school.
Awesome.
So I literally followed that plan, believe it or not. I followed that plan, and they speak about I'm getting excited now, going to the stakeholders in the community.
Yes.
And I often speak about people who open businesses here in the city. I always think about, okay, did they think about, the demographics? They think about who the folks that were going to be supporting. They think about, and I always ask those questions, and my friends are like, what are you talking about? Yes. And it goes back to having the business plan, doing a survey of the area and knowing who are going to be the individuals who are going to be, for business, thinking about business, who are going to be the individuals who are going to be supporting your business, or who are going to be giving to your business. They're coming to, if it's a restaurant, coming to purchase food. Yes. What kind of food do people eat in this area? Yes. It applies to a nonprofit, and not saying nonprofit selling food, but it applies to any business that you actually put together. You have to know who the folks are who are going to be supporting it, whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
So I'll say that. I'm sorry.
No. So we now know that the business plan was of ultimate support and
absolutely
and need.
Absolutely.
Because what the business plan does, it gives you the roadmap as to how you're going to run your foundation, whether it be a service business or whether it be a product business. So thank you, man. Because
and so with that, just kind of piggybacking real quick. So with that business plan, we know that you have to register your business, right? So
yes.
folks pop up on Facebook every day, and they're revealing their business page, and they're laying out what they're going to be doing. But the question you ask was, hey, have you contacted the state of New Jersey? Have you went online and did the application or register your business? Have you paid the fee? Are you going? Do you understand what that means? Are you going to be filing taxes? All these questions come up, and folks just think, "Oh no, I just created. I don't know anything about that. I just made a name up. Is it trademark? Have you had them to run the name in the city, or in the state to see if anybody else is using that name? Because you may create a name and not know that somebody else already has branded that name already. You know, so all those things come into play. And I mean, you're the business, you know more about this than I do, but yes, all that was done. So my business, my nonprofit was registered. You know, our name obviously is unique as to the Cory McNair Foundation. Nobody else has that name. And we have our own bank account. Obviously, you have to provide documentation to the banks. We did all that.
Awesome. No, because I want the listeners to understand that in spite of you providing so much work, you were doing the back end work to make it legitimate.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's
God
what
forbid
I want to know.
you have a good vision.
Yes.
Right. You mean well, but you can get have issues on the business side of things if you don't do the things properly that you have to do. And believe it or not, everybody's not happy for you.
No.
Everybody is not happy when you do good things or when you open up a business.
Yes.
So folks are going to be looking, are they registered?
Yes.
Let me look up their name in the state of New Jersey. So they have the storefront, but they shouldn't be, they shouldn't have set up shop here because they don't have a business. So be mindful of that. Absolutely. Yeah. They definitely should be mindful of that.
So what is the next project for the Cory McNair Foundation?
So I'll just mention the last project that we did that really touched my heart. We had a kid, Kayshawn, for Christmas of last year.
Okay.
Kayshawn actually has a I'll just say an encouraging story because he's a fighter. I'll say that he has persevered and he is beating the odds or fighting the odds. He was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 3.
Wow.
And he started to get treatment. Kayshawn got treatment at 3. I believe it was I don't want to say the exact therapy, so I won't say what actual treatment. He was getting treated at the age of 3 for leukemia.
Yes.
And then it went into remission for 7 years.
Okay.
So 7 years after he was diagnosed, the leukemia came back, and it came back more aggressively.
Wow. And
so I knew his father, and I said, you know what, God, I want to do something, for Kayshawn because he deserves to be able to smile. His dad would post things on social media, and he was often in a hospital room or getting treatment, at the doctor's office. And I was like, he's so young. I want him to be able to have a smile.
Yes.
So I reached out to his dad and I said, what can we do? I want to do something for him. And we kind of came up with a few ideas, and he mentioned he likes playing video games. He likes doing this. He likes doing that.
Okay.
So once again, crowdfunding. I went on social media, recorded a nice video.
Yes.
And I said, listen, I want to give Kayshawn the best Christmas ever.
Yes.
And we were able to raise about $3,000 for Kayshawn in cash. So we presented him with a big check. And we also were able to, people in the community, we were going to buy games with that money. People donated the game system.
Wow.
We had a lady, Letty, she's an artist here in the city of Trenton. She painted she painted a wheelchair with Spider-Man on it, painted the entire wheelchair.
Wow.
Ned White actually got the wheelchair donated for us, and Letty actually painted it.
Awesome.
And the name is leaving me, but he's a director of a program here in the city. Who's the director of A Better Way?
Oh, that's Perry Shaw.
Right, Perry Shaw.
Yes.
He came, and he's the one who actually brought the game system for the young man.
Awesome.
And he brought numerous other gifts from him as well. So when I talk about the village came together for him, the village really came together and blessed Kayshawn for Christmas.
Awesome, man. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So as you look back over your short life,
is
there anything
literally
is there anything that you would have done different now?
Is there anything I would have done differently? And as I start to grow and just, I'm becoming at one with me, with Cory.
Yes.
I feel like if I would have done anything differently, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Okay.
And I say that, and I mean it. I mean it because I often look back, and this speaks to the young Black man who is living, in an inner city, who's experiencing, walking past people who are selling drugs, who are doing drugs.
Yes.
When they witness gang violence, and they wonder, well, what would have happened if I would have been raised in another community? Why am I here?
Yes.
And growing up, you kind of, what kid wouldn't want to have all the luxuries in life?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
But I think you appreciate things more when you have to work for them.
Absolutely.
And so I don't regret anything.
Okay.
I'm happy for every experience I've had.
Okay.
Wherever I lack, God has always placed somebody there to be able to meet me wherever my abilities ended. There was always somebody there to help me to pick up the pieces of things that I didn't, I wasn't knowledgeable about, or things that I could not do. So I'm good.
Awesome,
I am so good.
Awesome.
And I'm in a position now where I can be able to help others where they lack.
Okay.
And all over, I think overall, I think I'm blessed, and I'm just excited. I'm excited for what's next, but I don't regret anything.
Now, I know just recently, maybe a week ago or past weekend, you were given an award. Can you tell us about that award that you just received?
So I actually, there's a lady here in the city. Her name is Stephanie Register.
Yes, no, Stephanie,
she has an organization that focuses on recovery.
Yes.
And my work has not really been in recovery,
yes.
Substance abuse.
Yes.
But when Stephanie reached out to me, she said, I want to recognize you, and I want you to speak about your nonprofit and the work that you do here in the city.
Yes.
And initially I was like, well, I don't really know, as far as what I could be able to give to your organization, because once again, my work is like kind of like law enforcement, and I was kind of trying to go over it, and it hit me, Cory, this is the work that you do. You are connecting with members of the community. So
absolutely.
Individuals who have substance abuse, they're not excluded from the community. They're a part of the community.
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
Literally, that's where I went with it, and I spoke about the work that we do in the community, and I also brought the law enforcement piece. I educated her attendees on programs that we're doing, working with in Trenton Police Department.
Yes.
So we actually have a program now in the police department where we're working towards looking at drug addiction as a disease.
Yes.
And we're not looking at it, and we're not criminalizing it.
Thank you.
And so what happens is, when you see like anybody who's from the area, if you go to like 129 and Warren, or you go to near Kathmandu,
yes.
you'll see like panhandlers out there. They have signs up, I'm disabled, please give me money,
yes.
things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Folks often are aggravated, irritated by these individuals, and they don't understand what they're actually going through.
Yes.
And so with law enforcement in the past, I would say probably all agencies, when these folks were, panhandling, we would give them a summons. When they wouldn't pay that summons, they would get a warrant.
Yes.
When they got the warrant, they would go to jail, things of that nature. But now I know definitely Trenton are working with different organizations,
okay.
To actually get them help. So when we pick them up and they have, instead of giving them the summons, yes. we'll take them and, get them to agree to check themselves into rehabilitation centers,
awesome.
to find them shelters,
awesome.
To find them mental health treatment. Some folks are actually out there in the streets and they're mentally ill,
Very true. Yes.
So
yes.
that's something that I can pride myself and say that I'm a part of an organization, a police department that knows that we have to do more
yes.
in the law enforcement community. And so that's what I spoke about. I spoke about that, about the recovery aspect and helping individuals who may have mental illness, who may have substance abuse, to get help, versus putting a Band-Aid and locking them up and throwing away the key. And as soon as they get back out, they're going back to the same thing they did before they actually, before they went into the judicial system.
Now, I want to ask you about this whole concept of defunding the police. What does
right.
that mean to you, and does it mean all that it means of not giving the police all the resources and the funding that they need? What does that mean to you, and how do we change that?
So defunding the police,
yes.
I think that for me, it means, and this is my take.
Yes.
It means allocating some of the funding that goes towards policing services,
yes.
And putting that into other areas.
Yes.
And I'm all for working with police. Now, as far as eliminating police, I think that wouldn't make any sense, obviously. But understanding like what we're doing now in Trenton, when I spoke about panhandlers,
yes.
Instead of petty offenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're standing outside and you're panhandling and giving them a summons for that.
Mm-hmm.
Getting them the proper services they need. They don't have to panhandle. Like
yes.
getting them the mental health services they need, right? So having, licensed therapists, an agency we can go to take them to, having like a shelter that can be able to give them housing,
Yes.
Having a drug rehabilitation center on call that we can be able to drop them off to if they have heroin abuse issues or alcohol, whatever it may be, linking up with agencies and making sure they get the actual the funding necessary to be able to help these individuals. For me, that's what that whole, and I maybe I could be wrong, but that's what it means to me.
No, I think you're right. I think what happened was when they were using the national platform for saying defund the police, it created a false and negative narrative.
False narrative. Right.
And what I thought they were meaning was, we're going to give you the money that you need per the police department, but we don't want it all to go to policing. We want some of it to be community policing. And so maybe it would be more POW organizations, maybe more police playing basketball in the evenings or doing tutorial services that the police would actually facilitate. And, there was a few years back, maybe 10, 20 years ago, I think Mayor Palmer had got a grant from the George Bush Foundation, the Thousand Lights Foundation. And the initiative was to keep a school, a junior school, and each ward of the city open almost 24 hours a day.
Wow. So
you can go there for homework help, swimming, basketball.
Wow.
And we
like
noticed
a
that.
Space.
Yeah. And we noticed that for the time that the those sites were open, crime was actually going down because all the resources that one might need was there. But at the same time, you could go there and have a good time swimming and play basketball. But then here we go again. Once the funding goes out, there's not another pot that you can go to, and so that's the challenge when you have these pilot programs, right? But I certainly do agree with you. The other thing I wanted to mention is one of the things I would love to see this city do better is we need one giant portal that everybody can go to when they need resources or to promote or post positive happenings in the city, right? Because a lot of times if you don't have like 4,000, 5,000 friends on Facebook, you really don't know what's happening in the city of Trenton because everybody is trying to do their own thing. So we've got to get folks in these very agencies to not be siloed, but want to share their gifts and resources with the whole community so that we could be
and I
better.
say that all the time.
Absolutely,
I literally say that we are stronger together than we are separate.
Yes.
Everybody's trying to recreate the wheel when guess what? We can work together. There's something that you have, Mr. Kevin, that I literally don't have.
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Yes.
You've already done the research.
Yes.
You've already been through the schooling. You've already been a part of the process.
Yes.
Why would I go and try and do it all over when you can literally tell me, brother, that's all you got to do. Here, go to this website.
But the other part of it though is we've got to break down the human nature of the ego, right? If you can set the come on now, if you can set the ego aside, because again, I was talking to some guy, I forgot his name. And we were talking about the number of not-for-profits that are in the city of Trenton. There are entirely too many.
It's either, I know definitely in the thousands, but I want to say between 2,000 and 5,000.
Yeah.
Something definitely thousands that sound like it's a lot.
It's entirely too many for the city to be this small and to only be 5 square miles. And we still find ourselves, finding individuals dropping through the hole because everybody is doing things because of ego. If
we have 5,000, I don't want to quote that number. We have some thousand nonprofits. That means that people should be tripping over services, literally. Yeah. Like we should be at every street corner. Like, what, you can't do. Oh, here you go. Well, here, like we should literally have. That's way too many to still have lack.
Way too many to still have these issues, these concerns, these challenges. So. I thank you for doing what you do. I thank you for your humbleness, and I thank you for setting aside your ego so that you can help other folks and other folks can help you.
Listen, I told you with the kid K-Sean, literally, I had the guy Perry Shaw. Yes. I had Ned White. I had Letty. I went to the police department. I had the sergeants. Union donated. I went to Bowles, our Black Officer Law Enforcement Society. Donated. Like I went to multiple organizations because I'm like, listen, I can't do this on my own.
Absolutely.
We can do this together.
Absolutely.
And we were able to raise, like I said, $3,000 for him, and we did it together. And I recognize everybody that contributed to that,
Awesome.
that particular project. We
Awesome.
doing this together. We ain't got to do it separate because
Yes.
I'm not trying to recreate the wheel.
Yes.
I'm trying to make sure that our people are taken care of here in this city.
Yes. And so we need more of the Cory McNairs around this town. So I thank you for not leaving us alone. I thank you for. I thank you for.
I ain't leaving.
I don't want you to leave, man. We want you.
Right.
We need more of you. But
Right.
but I just thank you for the wonderful work that you continue to do, and
Right.
And more importantly, man, the positive example that you are setting every single day. Right. So we need more examples and more young men to follow your suit. Now, I noticed one other thing too on Facebook that you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
When can people sign up again to take the civil servant entrance exam and that application?
So unfortunately, we're behind the
Yes.
8 ball now.
Okay.
But but once again, I put it on social media,
Yes.
and I was ready to get a little snippy too, because folks inbox me, and I tell them, like, I literally, when it first opened, people
Yes.
were asking, like, because it were open, I think it was open about a month.
Yes.
February, let's say 1st February to 28th.
Yes.
It closed. And people were, asking before. I said, it's opening up February 1st. Make
Yes.
sure you sign up. I had a guy to inbox me on February the 28th at around 4 p.m. and bro, what's the starting pay for Trenton Police? And I said, did you apply yet? Nah. I said, I used a few choice words that I would not say on this respectful show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A few of them I want to say them just so I can let you know what I'm not going to say them. But I said, if you don't get it out of my inbox
Yes.
and go and apply for that exam, we need you to be our next generation of law enforcement here in this community. I don't want to talk to you about what the salary is. You know what it is. I told you already.
Yeah.
So he said, okay. He laughed and said, okay. And he went and he applied and he sent me a screenshot of the receipt.
Okay.
But I was so not that I was mad, but I was a little aggravated.
Absolutely.
That I told you a month ago what the salary was. I gave you the steps, and here you are hitting me up on February the 28th at 4 p.m.
Yes.
asking for the salary again. Go and apply for that doggone exam. So he applied, and I'm going to definitely make sure that, he gets, as much as I can do,
Yes.
as far as preparing him for that process. He's a good guy, no record or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's going to be fine.
When is the next round though?
So every 2 years, every 2 years, the exam opens up.
Okay.
For municipal police, the max age is 35
Yes.
years of age. So you have to be hired by a police department before your 35th birthday.
Yes.
And that's really what it is. Now, you can still be law enforcement here in the county. The Mercer County Sheriff's Department, they hire up until you're about 55 years old. Literally.
Well, I can't even do that. Maybe I have to go undercover with special forces.
So you may have to go down to Florida or something. Florida, they'll hire you up until whenever.
Yeah, 60, right?
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of guys actually retire from New Jersey when they move to Florida. They'll retire and they'll do part-time work as like for the sheriff's department down there and do work in law enforcement. But yeah, literally 35 for municipal, and you can't forget about corrections as well. I mentioned I think that you should actually work in corrections before going into municipal police. So corrections, I believe their exam is every year now.
Now let me
every year.
Let me ask this question. So, is the training different for corrections and
police?
And police?
Yeah. So actually, it's actually all under one scope. It's all under the Police Training Commission.
Okay.
So essentially, I've done 2 academies because they require you to do 2 academies here in New Jersey, separate academies for corrections and police, but essentially it's the same academy.
Wow.
But you get your Title 39, which is your traffic laws and violations.
Yes.
And you get your your domestic violence portion as well with police.
Yes.
And you get a few other things, like you get your EBOT training for actually learning how to drive a police vehicle.
Okay.
There's a few things that obviously you would not cover in corrections that you would cover in police. But for the most part, they mirror each other. They're basically the same. You get a certification through the state for corrections, and you get a certification through the state for police. They're the same exact thing, except for a few things. Like I said, traffic, domestic violence, but we both do firearms training. We both do defensive tactics. We both do your physical portion, your running, your calisthenics, and all that.
Yes.
So essentially, they're the same.
Got you. No, that's good. That's
actually good. Corrections. Believe it or not, shout out to New Jersey Department of Corrections. The Corrections Academy was more challenging than the Municipal Police Academy in terms of like the rigor, because we actually stayed at the state police at the barracks. We actually we stayed at the military barracks in Seagirt, New Jersey.
Yes,
so we trained on the same grounds as the state police.
Wow.
And so of course we both were on the ground. So our major there at the academy was trying to mirror what the state police were doing. Now, I won't sit up here and say, shout out to the state police.
Yeah.
They are squared away. I'm not going to say we were doing the same things they were doing, but I will say that they wanted to mirror and make our training academy look up to par, and I think they did a really good job doing that.
Gotcha. Now, I've got to ask this question. This has always been a pet peeve, not of you, but Are police officers required to fight, like hand-to-hand combat? Because I think a lot of times, there was an incident up the street on the corner of South Broad and Warren. I mean, South Broad and East State Street over at the Veterans Park there, across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Yes.
And we were talking about the bias again, the cultural bias. So they always hang out there, right?
Right.
And these cops came from the sheriff's department, so they get out of their vehicle. They got the lights blaring, right?
Right.
They're tapping.
Stop in the name of the law.
Yeah,
right.
They're tapping their guns. They're holding on to their utility vests. And so, to the average person, it's like, what are we going through now? But so there was anger. You could see anger and frustration in the sheriff's department in their eyes as they were entering, exiting their vehicle. We need to tamp that down sometimes, because it could have been a much better engagement had they not stepped out of the vehicle like, I'm ready to do something, right?
So what I will say is, and we talk about this a lot, we use this term Monday morning quarterback, and you're a sports guy, you know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
What I will say is I will not Monday morning quarterback.
Yes.
Because I don't work full-time on patrol now, but I do still work overtime in patrol. And I have this thing called a police radio, and there's a lot of things that goes over that, right? So we don't usually know exactly what's going on. I'll say that. When we see, I had a guy the other day, I was working a side job, and he came in and said, brother, can you, I'm obviously I'm African-American, so he walked in, and I was relatable, and he said, brother, can you believe that it was just 8 cop cars? They pulled over one man. They had him in cuffs, and they still all pulled him over. And I said, I laughed, and I said, listen, I said, brother, with all due respect, I said, what happened? What was going on in that moment? He said, I don't know, but I know it was 8 cop cars there. And I said, exactly, you don't know. I said, so granted, now, once again, we are in a climate when things are very sensitive, right? So people see things that are happening to our minorities on television, and it's upsetting. So I will not take away from that, right? So I know that you literally are triggered. You experience that trauma when you see things like that happen. When you see 8 cop cars and 1 black man, you're like, well, what is going on now? So that trauma is being triggered, right? So I won't take away from that. What I will say is, working in law enforcement, being a black man and living in the city, right? So I'm on both sides of this. I will say that call, I don't know what happened there, but we have a lot of what we call it could have been a strong arm robbery, right? Someone could have literally forcibly taken something from someone, and that person could have called in and could have said, I was just downtown on Warren, and this guy hit me upside my head with I believe to be a gun, and he took my wallet. Right? So when that happens, we're not going to come and say, hello, how are you? This is your local community police officer. How you doing? No, we're coming because we don't know if that actually is a gun. And if you go on YouTube and type in armed guy shoots at police, that's what police go through every day. Right? I'm not taking away from it. I'm not taking away from all. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I get that. But, sometimes I'm down the street, looking at that corner at my church, and the same guy that's at that corner, he'll come down and I can have conversations. But I think you said one key phrase, relatable. Right. As soon as they see
that too, that helps. Yeah.
As soon as they see I'm the same color, they think they get a certain amount of pass and they get a certain amount of tone that's going to come back. Because I'm going to say, what's up, brother? What's good? And they
I get that all the time. And I respond that way. It makes them feel more comfortable.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I don't know what was going on. But obviously it was this one guy, and I see this guy all the time, so I knew he was not of harm.
He wasn't, right? Yeah.
But because
and unfortunately, it's some things that happen, and I know the city very well, and I'll just say that I hear certain things, and because I'm always listening to the radio when I'm at work.
Yes.
And I'll hear for instance, not to get too much in detail of what happens in the city, but I know if I hear something like, for instance, in West Trenton,
yes,
versus South, right?
Yes.
So if I hear something on the radio about, let's just say there's an incident that happened, and an anonymous female caller is calling in about a guy who's standing on a corner and he has a firearm on him.
Yes.
This is in West Trenton.
Yes.
Right. I know West Trenton. I'm from West Trenton. We kind of if they're going to do something, they're going to do it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So they're probably not going to be threatening anybody with something unless they're going to do it.
Yes.
So when I think about it, I think about, oh, that's probably a domestic violence incident. That's probably a female who's not saying that that's necessarily the case. It could be a guy who threatens someone. I'm not going to not go to the call, but you think as a cop, it sounds like a domestic violence incident. It sounds like she probably is upset that he didn't answer. So you kind of start to go through those things in your head.
Yes.
So when I mentioned when the cops come and they're getting out and they may seem a little bit more forceful, maybe not as nice, it could have been legitimately someone's girlfriend who called and said, this guy is standing on a corner with a gun and he has a gun in his waistband. And now the cops are not going to come and say hello, how you doing? They're going to be show me your hand. Right.
Absolutely.
So it may come off as a little bit more aggressive, but remember that cop, he has to make it back home to his family at the end of the night.
Absolutely.
So I'm not excusing anybody from, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know. You may have had a different lens as to the incident, but what I will say is I tried to convince people or to at least get them to take into account that maybe that incident, it may be an incident that requires police to show more of a command presence for the safety of themselves and also those who are actually in the community or on that block.
Understood. So Cory, I'm thinking, man, you should do a series of workshops around the city, man.
Listen, I mean, we can do. Listen, let me know. Let me know when you're ready to do it. I'm ready. I think we have, and what I will say is, people once again they try and they'll take credit and say, well, I've done this. There has, I know someone who retired from the police department, and they did that. They were back in the schools, like the DARE program and various programs that were back around when I was in elementary school. So they have had programs like this in the past.
Yes.
But I think every generation needs to have their own kind that's unique, and we don't have anything right now. So yes, absolutely. I think that's definitely something we can, work out.
Absolutely, man. But man, you have been a wonderful.
We can talk for hours. I keep dipping in certain areas and trying to pull back.
No, this is good. That's why you get your own show. That way I can keep talking.
Right.
Because I'm allowing the audience to hear both sides of Cory McNair, the police officer, right?
Right.
And again, just thank you for your service. But I'm also allowing the audience to hear about your social commitment, your entrepreneurialism to do the Cory McNair Foundation, and you're giving so much of it back. So I thank you, man. So with the time that we have left, I'm going to give you this platform. Is there anything else or anyone else you want to give a shout out to? Because I am just so grateful for your time and so grateful for what you do for this city of Trenton, man.
So I guess I'll just start by, I'm going to go back to my church days.
Yes.
You start with God and you end with God, right?
Yes.
So I want to just first thank once again my Lord and my Savior Jesus Christ for just allowing me to be in the moment that I'm in my life, being able to help people at their lowest points. When you work in law enforcement, you see folks at their lowest point in their life at times. And so for me to humbly go in and to be able to help pick them up during that time, that's enough for me. So I just want to thank God just for the opportunity. I want to thank my family for just always supporting me, knowing that my job can be stressful at times, and just being there for me. And I think if I could thank anybody, it would be my grandmother, because she makes sure that, when I work all those long hours, she makes sure that I'm fed and I'm nourished. She calls me son. Son, did you eat today?
Yes.
Or she'll call me and say, son, no. She's telling me as a grown man, don't forget to stop and get some food, on your way to work. And I'm like, okay, all right. But literally, we need those people to be in our corners,
absolutely,
to support us and to push us, so that we can all be successful. I don't know one person who's done it all alone.
Yes.
People can say they've done it all alone, but I don't know anybody who literally has done it all alone or all on their own. So that's all I have.
But you will remember when we started the podcast, you just talked about your village. So obviously you know that no man, certainly not you, were able to do this by yourself. There was a village of
absolutely. I got my village. Everywhere I'm at, they're following.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cory, brother, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to just ask for continued blessings upon your success as a police officer and the work that the Cory McNair Foundation does. You are a credit to this community, man. We need more folks like you, man. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, I wanted to say before we close, thank you for the work that you do as well and bringing us onto your platform, because we already know that if it wasn't documented, right, and we know, of course, in our hearts that what has happened with the work we've done, but if it wasn't documented, most folks forget about it, right? And we need other folks to get encouraged and to want to, you know, to be a part of the process as well. And by you putting it out there, they're hearing the good things and they may get encouraged to do good things as well. So we're just helping everybody during this process. We're planting seeds and you know, we're planting seeds to bear good, you know, good fruit. So, you know, I'm excited.
Now saying good fruit, I want to ask this question. This is a personal question now.
Right.
Where is Cory McNair 5 years from now? You know, councilman, mayor, what's going on?
You know what? I mean, only God knows. I am open for what, you know, what is, what comes my way. What I will say is when I was younger, I used to always, it helps when you're forceful, but then also you have to learn that everything ain't going to always go your way.
Absolutely.
When I was younger, I would be like LeBron. You know how LeBron loses a game and he's crying? Like he's like literally like he's in tears and he's a wreck. I would find myself like that.
Okay.
You know, when I wanted certain things to happen, I would be a crybaby about it when it didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen.
Gotcha.
But now that I look back at it and look back over my life, now I see that everything has happened the way it should have happened, and I am okay, and I'm in the best place. So I'm going to keep doing the work, and I believe that God is going to keep opening doors and keep bringing people into my life that are going to help me to grow. So what I will say in 5 years, I just want, in 5 years, I want to just be healthy.
Okay.
I want to be happy.
Okay.
And I want to still continue to be helping people.
Absolutely.
So whatever capacity that's in, I'm okay with it.
Perfect.
I have a career now. I have an education now. I have advanced education. I'm a homeowner more than once, right? I have people who actually, you know, rent, you know, they're living in one of my properties and they're seniors. So I'm helping them, and I want to make sure that we remain rent controlled for them. You know, so 5 years, I want to just be healthy, happy, and still helping people.
Awesome.
That's enough for me.
We're going to end on that note, brother. Thank you, man. Continue blessings, man. All right.
Well, yes, sir. And you have a blessed night. And once again, I'm ready. If you ever want me back on the show again, let me know, and I'm here.
Listen, you have open invitation, brother. We need more conversations like this, and we need more people like you, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Have a blessed night.
All right. We'll talk and text in a minute.
All right.
Bye-bye.
That concludes another episode of The Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. We hope you found this episode informative and enlightening. If you have any questions or comments about any of our episodes, please call 609-731-9311 or email kevin@minding-our-business.com. We look forward to joining us for our next one. Until next time.